We just heard from Sean Spicer, who had his press briefing earlier today, saying that it was the president who asked for the resignation of General Flynn over eroding trust.
Yeah, I must tell you, Steve, I think sadly that there's more to this, and there's a political backstory. While I respect the president's decision, I really think the Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus, made this move on General Flynn. Frankly, I don't think this was a firing offense. I think General Flynn could have publicly apologized to the president, and this would have been over. But in a way, perhaps this is the Pearl Harbor for real Trump supporters, because I think Mr. Priebus's agenda is clear. First, General Flynn, then Stephen Miller, and then Steve Bannon. Frankly, the White House staff has too many people whose loyalty is to the Republican Party and not to the president. The place leaks like a sieve, and those leaks are damaging to the president. They're not strategic leaks. They are specifically critical of the president. And frankly, I give great credit to Chris Ruddy of Newsmax to be the first guy with the courage to say what everybody who is loyal to the president is thinking. It's time for Mr. Priebus to move on.
What did you say about Flynn, Miller, and Bannon? What did you say?
I think Priebus's game plan is clear.
To get rid of all of them. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. And do you? What is the president? Does the president agree with you? Does the president know this? Is the president? I mean, if he suspected this, I couldn't imagine that he would keep Priebus on.
Well, I can't tell you what the president knows because I have not discussed it with him. But I think sometimes his supporters have to act forthrightly in his best interest. I don't think that the Chief of Staff is bringing him well. I think his own agenda and the party agenda is coming before the president's agenda. The criticism of the rollout of the executive orders on immigration that leaked out of the White House, very clearly not coming from Steve Bannon or Stephen Miller, very clearly coming from the Priebus faction, the establishment Republican, never Trump faction of the White House staff. And again, shooting their own team members in the back, not productive.
So let me ask you, when Reince Priebus took this position, do you believe that it was his goal to do away with the Trump revolution and to have business as usual ultimately out of the White House and with the Republican Party in concert, and that would be the Trump administration? Is that what you believe his goal was?
He's an establishment Republican with establishment Republican goals. He was very critical of the president's position on immigration and sealing our borders. The autopsy that was conducted on the last presidential election that we lost reached the conclusion under Mr. Priebus that we had to endorse open borders and amnesty to survive as a party. I disagree with that. I know the president disagrees with that. He's an odd choice. Is there no one on the face of the planet who actually supported Donald Trump from the beginning who could have done this job? I could name several people who are highly qualified and whose first loyalty is to the president, not to the Republican Party.
Why do you believe, maybe you have, maybe you haven't talked to Donald Trump. Why would he pick Priebus if you could see all this? Why do you believe he doesn't? And have you talked to Miller or Bannon about this, and what's their take?
I cannot tell you what the president's reasoning was in selecting Mr. Priebus, only that it is proving to be an error. Perhaps he did not know how duplicitous his chief of staff is. I have not discussed this with either Mr. Miller or Mr. Bannon, nor do I clear my opinions or statements with either one of them.
All right. Well, certainly Reince Priebus is welcome on this show anytime to give his rebuttal. I've talked to Reince Priebus over the years many times on this show, and I would love to have him on and address any and all of this. When you say that it was his move, he made this move on Flynn. Did he leak? Was he involved, do you believe, in the leaks? Or was it the intelligence agency on its own, as we believe, someone leaking these transcripts or these NSA intercepts or whatever they were to the Washington Post and the New York Times?
I think it is probable that the leaks come from the White House staff. The reason for that, of course, is an opportunity to vanquish a rival. I think Mr. Priebus's problem here is he wants to be the only person who talks to the president, and he resents those who have their own independent relationship and lines of communications to the president. We have seen under my former mentor, President Nixon, what happens when the president gets isolated and when he gets all of his information from one or two aides. I think that is not the Trump style. The president prides himself on being accessible and being willing to listen to all opinions. But this mania to destroy anyone who has an independent line of communications to the president is very counterproductive.